Now, earlier I spoke to one of the presidential candidates you saw just now, and just as a reminder, it's someone I have a lot of time for. When asked about a progressive woman, Marianne Williamson, and her 2024 presidential bid, Karine Jean-Pierre decided to, well, in leftist circles, I believe they call this othering.
I mean, if I had what is it called, a little globe here, crystal ball, then I can tell you. But I imagine 8-ball, whatever. If I could feel her aura, I just don't have it. I just don't have anything to share on that.
I found that truly disgusting, actually. Who the hell is this ridiculous laughingstock of a press secretary to patronize and sneer at Marianne Williamson? Marianne Williamson has more integrity, more principle, and an infinitely more substantive contribution to make to our politics than Karine Jean-Pierre will ever have. Joining us now, one of the 3 declared Democratic presidential candidates. It is Marianne Williamson. Marianne, great to see you today. I really appreciate you joining us. I want to refer back to the clip that we played in my introduction there from your last campaign, where you were really aiming at the whole system in terms of healthcare and the fact that we actually, what we really have is a sickness care and we don't invest in people's long-term health. And broaden it to the leading message on your website, your presidential website, where you lay out your policies. I thought this phrase was really interesting. You talk about a moral economy that reflects the basic principles of our humanity. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, because I had seen that clip of your defending me and saying something about my having been mocked by the press secretary. So I do thank you for that, and thank you for having me on your show. When I talk about a vision for a moral economy, I think we're all aware, whether we're on the right or on the left, that trying to live an ethical life, trying to live a life of conscience and compassion and what we think of as being a good person is important. But I think that that's important when it comes to our public policies as well. And a moral economy, to me, is one which puts people before short-term profits for huge corporate entities. It's pretty much as simple as that. I think that the humanitarian values that are at the core of our Declaration of Independence should be our guiding and governing principle, and not necessarily economic values that are divorced from conscience or ethics.
So you talk about the system as a whole, and you make clear that, in your view, Democrats and Republicans over the last 50 years, I think you say, have built a system that goes in the opposite direction to what you just described. How would you change the system?
Well, first of all, government, I believe, does have a function. I know you talked in your sharing at the beginning about how we need to get the federal government out of so much of our business because there are such swamp creatures there. And you're absolutely right. There are swamp creatures, and overreach by government is something that we should all be concerned about. But we should also be concerned about all the swamp creatures in Tallahassee and Austin and Sacramento and every other state capital as well.
Yes,
and we should be concerned, right, and we should be concerned about all the swamp creatures in the boardrooms of many of these huge corporate entities that have so much influence. So I think that there is a proper balance to be struck. We do want to respect the first principle that states are laboratories of reform. That's an important principle. But I do believe that the federal government has a function. Part of that function does have to do with regulations, safety regulations, environmental regulations. If you have some huge, big agricultural or big food or big chemical companies, for instance, that is knowingly allowing carcinogens, toxins of any sort in our food, in our agriculture, in our environment, then I believe that the federal government does have a part to play in regulating those things. I don't care that it makes those companies more money. If that chemical that they're putting in that food is harming a child's brain, get it out. And I think that the federal government has a role in doing that.
So how do you, I mean, it sounds like a big theme that's coming across is corporate power.
Yes.
I agree with you about that. How do we limit corporate power? How do we put people first? I wrote a book called the title of the book was More Human, Designing a World Where People Come First. Very much in line with your message. What's your solution to getting the corporate power out and people power back in?
Well, first of all, I know you did in your book, and this is an example of something that's happening in this country that's very interesting. People on both the left and the right understand that corporate tyranny is as much for us to worry about as governmental tyranny. And I do think that people are realizing that a kind of soulless, unethical form of capitalism has put its tentacles everywhere. You know, even Adam Smith, who was the primary architect of free market capitalism, said that it cannot exist outside an ethical context. And people are realizing how unethical it is, for instance, when huge insurance companies that are making billions and billions of profit will deny a life-saving operation to someone who needs it. All of these people realize this now. People realize that there is a tyrannous effect of insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, big oil companies, big chemical companies, food, and gun manufacturers and defense contractors. People do realize this. So we have to deal with it. And we don't want to use the government like a big bludgeon. It's not a meat cleaver. But there is, first of all, such a thing as not, and you talk about this in your book, why are we giving subsidies? Why are we giving these huge corporate subsidies to these corporations, which then cause all these problems and are themselves making these huge corporate profits? You stop these corporate subsidies to companies that should not be receiving them. You go to a reasonable corporate tax rate. And I believe that these regulations, this orgy of deregulation, job-killing regulations, they were called, not all of these regulations are job-killing. They are safety regulations. They are food regulations. You know, years ago, when the FDA, somebody from the Food and Drug Administration, saw that there was a carcinogen in a particular food, they could tell that manufacturer to get it off the shelves. Today, all they can do is politely request that you consider, please, CEO of huge food company that's making billions of dollars of profit, knowingly allowing carcinogens in our food. I say the FDA does have a role in saying, get that off the shelves because you're not going to poison the American child.
You see, finally, Marianne, look, I mean, this is why it's so important you're in the race. No one else is talking about this stuff. Agree or disagree, you're bringing points and arguments and facts that no one else is. Just finally, on the campaign, how is it going? What kind of reception are you getting? Are you still getting this kind of patronizing treatment from the Democratic establishment?
Well, I am still getting some patronizing treatment, and as we know, there is a lot of, the DNC has said that there will be no debates, and they are clearly doing what they can to make it easier for the president to win the nomination. But I'm out there, and I have another opponent who is out there, and the American people are waking up. You know, the only way to protect our democracy is through the practice of more democracy. So the American people at a time like this, for the sake of our democracy, should have options, should have as much array in front of them of ideas, whether they're on the left or on the right, whether they are in the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. That's democracy. So I think people are hearing that message. I'm doing what I can, and I'm grateful to all media sources, yourselves included, that do give me an opportunity to get my message out there. The people, it's not just that I deserve to have a chance to get my message out there. I think the American people deserve to hear whoever's running and what they have to say.
Exactly. Well, we're proud to have you, Marianne. I do urge people to check out your website and read what you have to say, because I think it's an important and interesting message. And
thank you.
We're grateful for you to being here this evening to share it with us. See you soon.
Thank you very, very much. I'm honored to have been here, and thank you for having me.